We have this interface here, but we don't have any responsive design. It only looks really good in mobile view. We have a container, so we have a start to make this responsive. So how we want to do this is we want to use something called Flexbox, a powerful little framework to get up and running. In the past, to do this type of thing with CSS was difficult, and we'll get to that in a second. But what we want to do here is create a little style for the cards themselves. So we're going to add a class attribute here, and we're going to add that class selector called crypto card, and we're going to put this on each card. And we have to do this right now because it's static. When we get into this dynamic work, we will not have to do this for every data item that comes across the wire. So we're just building the mockup here. So we have this class applied. Again, there's no effect here until we actually add some properties, but we have the selector in place. So now we can start to make this card look a little bit better. You know, I'd probably like to give it a little bit of a different background so it pops a little bit. It's not black, obviously, but you could just do it quickly to see that it's up. So we're good. We have a little bit of a white smoke in the background. Maybe we want to make this one pure white. You won't see the difference yet. It's very subtle until we add a little bit of a border. Maybe I'll make that a little bit darker, like a darker gray, so you can kind of see it pop out a little bit. You can kind of make it out, but the reason why you can't make it out is because there's no border to it. As soon as we get a little bit of a border to it, you'll see it stand out a little bit more. So you can adjust this however you want. I mean, if you wanted to give your background color red, you could do that, but I prefer to keep it a little bit gray scheme, and then kind of keep a lighter scheme to this for now. But like I said, you can do this all in a dark theme if you so choose. But it doesn't stand out because there's no border to our card. But for right now, we have at least a little subtle difference in color. Again, all this design stuff is very subjective. It's up to the designer. I'm just keeping this in a light theme for now. So what we want to do is a box shadow, and you can give it some properties here. We'll do the same thing. Maybe we'll give it, we could do 25 pixels, you'll see, and we give it black. You'll see it kind of really have a very strong shadow, which might be a little bit too much, right? A little bit too much 3D. So maybe we'll tone that down. Maybe give it 10 perhaps, and you'll see it's a little bit nicer. You know, it depends on your preference, again, how much you want to pop. But you can see the edges are a bit harsh, and maybe black is a little bit too harsh as well on this white background. So RGA is another way of designing of giving RGBA is another, and I'm misspelling it here. That's why I need to go. That's why I'm not seeing it. It's RGBA. And then I can use the color picker if I wanted to use the color picker. The last element there is a transparency, by the way. So you can give it a little bit of a lesser, you don't need to have it so sharp if you don't want to. You can kind of play with it a little bit. You'll see it kind of changes a little bit here. But that kind of makes it pop a little bit, but without a very strong shadow. You can see it's a little bit of an edge and it pops out, makes it look a little 3D. Maybe we'll take off the edge of the border by giving a border radius. If you did 25, it'd be super round here. I don't really like that. You can see how it's really rounded. So maybe 10 pixels or 5 pixels might be good. Again, you play around with it. Maybe 5 might be a little bit better, perhaps. You know, you can kind of mess around with this however you want. It defines the outer border edge. I'm thinking, maybe we'll leave it. We'll see. See how it goes. Padding, we'll add a little bit of padding to things on the inside of that box. Remember the content, and then there's padding and border, and then finally margin is on the outside of that border. But for now, I'll do a little bit of padding between the content and the border. So we'll do a little bit tiny padding there. Adjust that as you will. We can make it relative, right? Padding is relative to the main element, which in fact is the div tag of the crypto card. A little bit of margin on the outside of that border of that crypto card is relative to that main element. So as that one grows, padding and margin will adjust versus giving a hard-coded pixel. Maybe we'll put a little bit of a difference between the cards a little bit more, but you can just play with it as you want. Just a gap there. Mostly targeting mobile, but ideally this is going to be, these cards are going to be they're going to be horizontal soon for desktop. We can put a max width on this thing to make it a little bit more narrow if we wanted to, but we're going to have to shrink the image because the image is a little bit too big. So we're going to have to do that. Expand this out. You can see the card is taking up 100%, right? It's basically not what we want. So that's why, we can put a max width on this thing to make it so it doesn't take up the whole space when we expand it. So maybe we'll put 25%. So now we're being a little bit more responsive, right? 25% of the size of the window. We can put a maximum width of 300 pixels. Maybe we just want the cards to be exactly that. We always want them to be exactly that. We don't want the cards to grow or shrink. We want them to be consistent at 300 pixels. So now when we expand it and collapse it, it's always 300 pixels. It's a fixed unit. But we probably should align the text as well. Just align the content and align things a little bit better. And like I said, I think the image is probably a little bit too big, and we'll probably have to change that here. So you can just inspect. A lot of CSS and design is visual. I've had to develop a fine attention to detail. I can see right now that I misspelt some things there. Volume is spelt wrong, but the attention to detail and my eye is getting better in terms of spacing, but it comes over time. So we can add crypto card since we know that has that attribute, and we can target the image here. So the image that is within the crypto card element that has that class, we can set now the width to 60 pixels. I know we could use the standard image from CoinGecko, but we're just showing that we can actually, target the image here, and we can set a fixed width and height because we want that image to be a little smaller. Again, it's your prerogative if you want to make this bigger or not. I just chose 60 by 60. So now everything fits nicely in the card. And maybe we'll add a little bit of a margin here a little bit because it's, to the bottom because things have changed a little bit. Just a little bit more spacing. And the spacing is really, it's kind of a visual thing. You can always use your dev tools to kind of see how much the margin is and what it looks like and if spacing works for you. So we can do that, and then we can add another selector, and I'll target the H2, which you can see that's that header. I'm going to target this, and we're going to add a margin of 0.5 and 0 to this, so it has a little bit of a better header, and we're going to add a color to it as well. Maybe we're going to keep it similar to the H1, the main header of the page, or maybe we'll turn it red. I'm not sure, but you can pick whatever you want. So maybe we'll try to keep it consistent. And then after we do that, we'll refresh, take a little look at this. Doing a couple things here. So maybe that looks all right. You can kind of see it now. I scrolled into view. A couple things here is I'm repeating myself here with the dot crypto card. And we can actually target the paragraphs here as well if we want to. Those are all the labels in there, and maybe give them a different font or something like that, or a different color. Maybe we'll make it all consistent here. But if you notice, we're repeating ourselves, the dot crypto dash card and the element. There's actually a better way to do this and a smarter way to do this. So once we got this looking the way we want it, this works and this is fine, but we can also keep this contained in the crypto dash card selector if we wanted to. We might have to tweak this a little bit if we want to. It works perfectly fine, but there is another way to do it. So we can just drag this up if we want to. And we're going to put this inside of here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove that duplication there of the crypto card. So we're going to have the class, the outer class, and then dot crypto card. And then we can add our element selectors in here. So it's contained. These will be the elements that are only affected that are within a container called crypto card. So you have the container called CryptoCard, and then you can target the elements only inside of that. This way is perfectly fine, but the other way is kind of more cleaner actually, because you can see there that if you needed to grab that style and put it somewhere else, it would all be contained. So the selectors work the same way, it's just a better way of writing it. So now we have CryptoCard, we have some styling on the card itself. Now we're targeting the elements itself as well, the images, the H1 and the paragraphs. And we might want to add a little bit of, so now we have a nice card. We might want to add a little hover effect. And I'm thinking maybe, and this is called a pseudocode. So you can use ampersand and hover for this element. So when the mouse cursor goes over this element, we're going to make it pop a little bit. And you can use the canvas translate. So we're going to use translate Y. It's going to just pop a little bit. So you see it kind of toggles a little bit, just a little effect to make you look like you're selecting it. You can do a lot of things with Canvas, and you can do a lot of these type of things with HTML5. It's pretty neat, but maybe we'll make this a little bit more subtle. So we have a nice little border. We have a nice little hover. I think it looks pretty good, but we need to adjust. We need to address the fact that it's not responsive, because in desktop view, everything is aligned to the left. Ideally, we want these things to wrap horizontally is what we want, and that's what we're going to need to do. But the good thing is we already put the container we already have that card container. So it looks perfect in desktop, but we're going to want to apply this to mobile view and tablet view, because right now this is not a responsive UI. We're going to do it by using, like I said, Flexbox. So here's a little bit of a cheat guide. Flexbox, it's pretty neat, but you need to kind of, look at this a little bit. Visuals help. So we want to we have the container. So we want to make this container flexible. So we need to add the attribute called display flex, first of all, and that will tell the browser that we're using Flexbox. Once we have a flexible container, then we can control things are viewed and how those card items will be rendered either horizontally or vertically. So the good news is we have a container already that we set up. And we just need to add display flex to it to make it a Flexbox container. So display flex. For right now, you can see it changes a little bit already. You can see there, it's kind of now horizontal a little bit. And that's what the justify content was there for. I put it in previously, but that's kind of justify the content of the container, which is part of Flexbox. But right now we're in a situation where when we go back to mobile view, we've lost that vertical piece, right? So it's squished up. This is not responsive now. We've made it look good for desktop, but now we haven't for mobile. So we need to look down and you can see flex direction and flex wrap. So we can wrap the items, which eventually we're going to have like 30 to 100 items. We would like them to wrap around. So that would be pretty nice. So we don't have to worry about the scrolling. So we'll make our flexible container wrap. And you can do cool things like wrap in the reverse way. You can do all sorts of cool things here. But one thing we want to do is we want to make this flexible container, want to make it wrappable. So we're going to say flex wrap. And we're going to add the attribute for wrap to it so that we can save this. So when we actually change it, it does wrap. It does look like it's working a bit here. So that's actually good. But did we trick it or not? Okay, so we could put flex wrap. So we're on the way to making this responsive. So you can see now in mobile view that it's wrapping because we have not a lot of space. You can see that, if we remove the justify center, we need that in there. So the window size has changed. So the wrapping is basically fitting one card in for each. This is the justify content piece that I had in before. You can see you can justify start, end, center, space evenly. Like there's all sorts of things that this visual guide helps you with. But you got to remember there's two axes in Flexbox, the main axis and the y-axis. We have our flex container. It's looking pretty good here. It's centering everything. It's wrapping. So actually, you can actually add a gap as well. So if you want to put a little bit more spacing, because it's a flex container now, we don't have to rely on margins so much. We can tell the Flexbox to say, apply a gap to it. So I actually think this is working all right. But there is another way of targeting mobile, by the way. It's called media queries if you really wanted to be specific. But for right now, the wrap is actually handling what we want it to do. We might want to add a gap between things. So we're going to add a gap of 2, just so the elements themselves have a gap and that's always consistent. And again, we're controlling the flex container, and it controls any of the child objects within. So it's very powerful, actually. And it's pretty responsive right now. Now we have a good view support for mobile, a good support for desktop and for tablet, and a good support for desktop. So you can see now the way it's wrapping. We only have 3 items, but if you see more, you would see 2 by 2 all the way down. And then when you went to desktop, if you had 20 items, you'd see them all wrapping for the size of the screen. So it's responsive.